Пане Сергію, добрий день.
Good afternoon, Serhii. Good evening.
Вітаємо вас на другому
Welcome to stage 2 of the selection for HQCJ. Your interview will be conducted by all members of the Commission: Stephen Markman, me, Ivan Mishchenko, Ted Zarzeczny, Serhii Varlanov, Robert Bergeisen, and Yevhen Mezhentsev. The rapporteurs for your interview are Ted Zarzeczny and me. Should for any technical reasons our interview be interrupted, we will of course reach you to reschedule your interview. During the interview, the commissioners will be asking you questions. We are kindly asking you to be precise, and a commissioner asking you the question has the right to limit the time for your answer. But before we start the interview itself, we will give you the floor for self-presentation, for the introductory remarks, to tell us a little bit more about your motivation, about the ideas that you have about the functioning of HQCJ and the judiciary as a whole. I'm now passing the floor to my colleague, Rapporteur Ted Zarzeczny.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mokhonchuk. I think our viewers would be interested in a little bit of information about you. I will give the highlights of your personal career and circumstances, and then I hope that you will, in your opening remarks, provide us with any further information. You are, sir, a Doctor of Legal Sciences, and you're currently employed as a professor of the Criminal Law Faculty at the Yaroslav Mudry National Law University in Kharkiv. You've had that position for a number of years, and prior to that, you were a lecturer at the University of International Affairs and an assistant and associate professor of criminal law, as I reported at Yaroslav Mudry. However, in 2010, you began another career, and for 5 years you were the head of the main justice division in the Kharkiv region. You are 52 years of age, and you are the recipient of a number of awards, including a Certificate of Merit from the Kharkiv Regional Organization of Lawyers Union of Ukraine, and a Certificate of Merit from the Kharkiv Regional Division of the Ukrainian Notary Chamber. Your experience in the field of law has been 23 years. So I will turn the matter over to you now, Mr. Mokhonchuk, and invite you, please, to share your introductory comments, your motivation for making an application to be a member of the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and any other matters that you think is relevant for the Commission to take into account in considering your candidacy. So I turn the matter over to you now, sir.
Thank you. Dear members of the Selection Commission, you have already introduced some information about me. The only things I'd like to add is that I'm married. I have 2 grown-up sons. And as far as my motivation is concerned, let me tell you the following. And it's quite easy for me to explain my motivation. The war that we are currently having in our country served as an impetus for me to accept the challenges, to face the challenges, and use my experience of being a lecturer, use my experience of being a manager, and promote those processes that are happening in the country. And right away, I need to mention that those candidates who will be recommended by you and then appointed by HCJ, I mean those 16 candidates who will become members of HQCJ, they need to understand they are indebted to the armed forces of Ukraine and the people of Ukraine. And should we be entrusted with this great honor, we need always to remember that. And thanks to them, we have this opportunity to participate in this selection, to have this interview. So I urge everyone to remember this, and I would like to wish the newly appointed HQCJ to always keep that in mind, that their work must be transparent, done in a due and diligent way, according to the law. But let me focus on one more aspect that is really disappointing for me. Every morning I read the news. I dedicate half an hour of my morning to get updated on the most recent news. I'm not a participant of any political movement, but as a citizen of Ukraine, I'm interested in the news. And I got disappointed because we currently have this memorandum signed with the EU on macro grant in the amount of 18 billion euros, but at the same time, the European Union once again points to our faults. And I see that they are focusing on the issues that we are currently discussing today, the improvement of the work of HQCJ, and not just the improvement. It's about clear requirements. So one of the first requirements for the improvement in the work of the judiciary is that a new methodology for the assessment of candidate judges should be developed during the first, second, and third quarters, and during the fourth quarter, a selection should be conducted for those candidate judges. But at the same time, there is one more condition mentioned by the EU. It says that on our way to the EU, we must strengthen our fight with corruption on the highest level. And it's indeed very sad because very recently we've had this scandal with corruption in the ministry, and I am ashamed of such people, and this is my motivation.
Thank you very much for your answer. At this stage, I will report to our viewers, Mr. Mokhonchuk, that you have requested that the Selection Commission deal with a matter in camera because it involves protected information. And so we will deal with that application as follows. You have made that application to us. As you know, our commission is dedicated to full transparency, and that is why we have conducted your interview and that of all of the other candidates in public, live streamed. However, we do respect the right of candidates to declare an issue to be an issue that needs to be dealt with in camera. We will consider your application in camera. We will determine the grounds that you advance to us for this application, and then we will decide whether or not the application will be granted or not granted. If it is not granted, you will be asked the questions that relate to this matter. So, do you understand that, sir?
Yes.
Yes? All right. I'm going to ask our technology people, please, to sign us off. In terms of the public streaming of this, we will hear the application in camera, and then we will make a decision, and it will be reported live and live streamed.
anyone else, no other participants.
Yes, I'll mention that when we go back on.
We on air.
All right, very good. For the benefit of our viewers, we have considered the request of Mr. Mokhonchuk for a closed session with respect to a family matter. We have heard the circumstances, and we have unanimously agreed to grant his request. The session was held, and we have received the information. This information will not be to the prejudice, and the application will not be to the prejudice of Mr. Mokhonchuk, or for that matter, any other candidate. Now, we will continue, and I will continue with a few questions that are related to finances. In your 2015 declaration, Mr. Mokhonchuk, you have declared that there were savings of $86,000 US dollars and 16,000 euros. And so as a result, we are concerned about those savings. Is there any explanation that you wish to share with us about that?
Yes. If you look at my declaration, which I first filled out in 2015, between 2010 and 2015, I filled out paperback declaration while being a civil servant, and in 2015, it was my first time filling out an e-declaration. I would break down this sum into halves, and I forgot to mention that during the closed session of the interview, but half of that sum relates to the circumstances that I have presented to you during the closed session, and the remaining sum, I don't really like this methodology for calculating the sum of savings, but there is no other methodology, and I had to use that methodology to explain the source of that income. And I'm asking the commissioners to understand that our salaries were always associated with the exchange rate of hryvnia to dollar. I analyzed the information carefully. I went online. I studied my income, the money that I made before 2015, and it should be mentioned that if we take this sum in foreign currency for the period of 2010 to 2015, then we are talking about a sum of $60,000, and between 2010 and 2015, that's almost $96,000 or $97,000. So if we take out a half of this sum, and if we believe that the half was spent on living, on supporting living, then you will see that this is a sum that can be explained. And I'd like to address the Commission with the following. Since I started working in civil service in 2010, I submitted paperback declarations, and if you analyze these declarations, you will see that all my property and all my savings are reflected in those declarations. But it should be also mentioned that If we are saying that the institute of declaring income is an effective criteria for prevention of lack of integrity and monitoring of the compliance between their level of income and their lifestyle, we need to look at this in dynamics. So I was filling out e-declarations starting from 2015. And if you study this declaration in dynamics with other declarations, you will see that as of 2015, I declared all my property and no purchases were made during previous periods. So that was everything I had accumulated by 2015.
All right, thank you for your answer. I have another question, not related to any financial issues, but we were provided with information that from 2008 to 2011, you had a power of attorney from Mr. Hennady Kernes, Kernes. Can you please explain why that power of attorney was issued to you?
Of course, that was the power of attorney issued for me to represent his interest in a criminal case. That was a one-time power of attorney. In spite of the fact that it was issued for 3 years, it presupposed my one-time participation in the appellate court of Poltava region. I participated in a court hearing once.
Right, and when was that court hearing held? Do you recall? What year?
In 2008.
Now, we attempted to examine any record that exists with respect to your registration as an attorney. It's my understanding, the information and advice I have received is that in order to represent a party in a criminal case, you must be a registered attorney. And we attempted to confirm whether or not you were a registered attorney at this time, and we could find no registration. Can you comment about that, please?
I did not participate as an attorney. I participated just as a representative.
I see. Now, Mr. Kernes, as I understand it, was elected the mayor of Kharkiv in 2010. And you had a power of attorney for him from 2008 until 2011. The information that you have provided is that in June of 2010, you were appointed for 5 years as the head of the Justice Department in the Kharkiv and the Kharkiv region. Now, is it just a coincidence that you had a power of attorney from the mayor at this time? Or is there any other explanation that you can provide for these circumstances?
Mr. Kernes was not the mayor in 2010, and that is in no way related to my appointment to the position of the head of the unit of justice in Kharkiv region.
My information was that he was first appointed as acting mayor and then was subsequently elected mayor, but both in 2010. When was he elected mayor?
He was the secretary of the city council in the period of the election. I don't remember exactly the year of the election in Kharkiv, but at that time he was not the mayor, he was the secretary of the city council.
I see. Our information is that he was elected mayor in 2010, but we will check that information if your memory is otherwise. All right, those are the questions that I have, sir. I'm going to turn it over to my co-rapporteur, Judge Mischenko.
Дякую. Пане Сергію, в продовження
Serhii, to follow up with the questions asked by my colleague, let me ask you the following.
досить багато є в інтернеті публікацій,
On the internet, we come across a lot of publications
досить тісно
that
пов'язують вас з колишнім мером
show a rather close connection of you with the former mayor of Kharkiv, Hennady Kernes.
Мушу зауважити, що всі ці публікації
I must stress that all those publications are available on rather dubious websites, but nevertheless, there are quite a lot of such accusations. So if you could comment on this. As far as I understand, all these questions are asked in the context of my further work within the civil service. Let me say the following. If you ask me whether I knew Hennady Kernes, yes, of course I did. If you ask me whether I communicated with him, yes, I did. But not the way mass media represented. We were acquainted. If you ask me whether he influenced me in the decision-making process in any aspect, I will tell no, he didn't.
Зрозуміло, дякую.
Clear? Thank you.
Тепер мені здається, ми можемо
Now, as it seems to me, we could go over to your motivation letter
стосовно того, які у вас можуть бути
and discuss your ideas you have currently got about the new HQCJ. While answering question number 8 of the motivation letter about the future of the judiciary, you are rather concise, and let me quote, hence, the key challenges for Ukraine as the country of transitional democracy are corruption and impunitability. And both of these phenomena are mutually interrelated, and to interact them, we need to have the decisions that are often on the surface, but which should be the decisions of principle.
Знаєте, ми всі вже знаємо такі принципи, якими
We all know about the principles that the new HQCJ should be guided by.
про власне реформування судової системи.
And if we speak about the reform of the judiciary, the way it should look like, as I've mentioned in the introduction, the key challenges here, as for me, are corruption.
Якщо ми так говоримо трохи алегорично і
If we speak in some allegories,
я б порівняв судову систему
I would compare the judiciary to a sick patient,
таким, що скоріше
but the patient who is rather alive than dead.
і на питання, чи можна вижити
And if we answer the question whether this system can be cured, I would say yes, it can be cured.
звернемося до документів
If we look at the documents of the European Union, the major factors indicated there are political will and other things. And these are the things that could help us fight corruption. Currently, political will is declared. This is political will aimed at the purification of the system and fighting corruption. But today, corruption is about additional finance that could otherwise be spent on the defense sector. This has also saved lives of specific people, servicemen and civilians. And when we speak about the principal position that state should take in relation to the judiciary, that must be really the position of yesterday, not tomorrow, not after the victory, but today and actually yesterday. It should be the position of the state that aims to ensure a fully functioning judiciary. When I mentioned the decisions that lie on the surface, I meant that the judge who actually tarnishes the reputation of the whole judiciary and casts doubt on the integrity of all other colleagues. The principled decision would be immediate bringing of this judge to criminal accountability, removal of him from the judicial position, and thus we will have this illustration or purification of the judiciary. That's what I meant when I talked about the decisions lying on the surface. Thank you, but in the context of the HQCJ, because, bringing to account and further actions are the things that are the mandate of the High Council of Justice. But what about the HQCJ? What are the decisions lying on the surface and what could be done by the Qualification Commission for this? Let me continue then. I think that we should stop continuing this illustration of the judiciary by trying to detect judges who are not men of integrity. We are balancing on the verge of interference into their professional life all the time. I think that it's better to put in some filters in the selection process, in the process of selection of people who are dreaming of connecting their life in a way with the judicial position. And in that way, we should install some preventive mechanisms, and only men of integrity would then become judges. And as far as the second issue is concerned, it's related to the assessment of incumbent judges. That should be a differentiated approach. We should not just associate all judges who are people of integrity and some unscrupulous judges, because there are judges who are fully responsible about their job. And in that way, we would also get rid of such judges. Thank you for your answer. Let me give the floor to my colleagues. Stephen Markman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Professor Mokhonchuk, for participating in the competition. Thank you very much. You've had 35 years of dedicated service to the law, and we're appreciative of that fact. You say in your motivation, and I'm following up on what our chairman has said, you say in the motivation that the judiciary of Ukraine has been at the stage of reforming for quite a long period of time now, and in the end, it's not solved problems. And this is confirmed by the sad results of surveying the population and professionals directly participating in court proceedings, but who are not judges and employees of the court apparatus. Let me ask you much the same question again. What will change with Professor Serhii Mokhonchuk on the High Qualifications Commission? How is that going to alter what you see as defining the judiciary of Ukraine, which is endless reform? What is going to change? What are you going
When I was writing my motivation letter, I actually anticipated this question. So what could I contribute with? Of course, I could contribute with my knowledge acquired over this period of time. I can also offer the society my position, that is the position of principle. And I could clearly say that the work of the newly established HQCJ will become better. If we speak about the new composition of the HQCJ, I'm sure that all the people who submitted their documents, who have been allowed to participate in the second stage, and when watching the interviews, I just could confirm this. These are probably all decent people, but we should understand what each of us could contribute with to the activity of the new HQCJ and how this new commission will be functioning. If I speak about what I could contribute with, I would compare the new HQCJ to a soccer, to a football team. And I would dwell on this football topic which Ted suggested while talking about the second stage of the competition. So I see the work of the new HQCJ as a game played by an experienced team, and with each line being well-balanced, professional, and the activity of not just me, but all members of the HQCJ is aimed at the achievement of one single positive common result.
But can't we assume that there's been good people involved in the reform process for many years? You've just said something about there having been decent people in the process. Is there some intractable institution, some intractable sense of culture, some intractable part of the people who are on the court? So why have we not been more successful in your judgment over the past years of reform that have been attempted?
Ви знаєте, чому ця реформа не завершена?
You know, this is due to several reasons, and one of the reasons is absence of political will for the completion of the reform, I would say, for the completion of the reform that has been launched in Ukraine. Most probably, let me switch to a little bit different dimension. If we keep comparing the new HQCJ and the previous HQCJ and speak about the failures of the previous HQCJ and the improvements in this one, new one, I would rather speak about the reasons due to which the previous composition of the Public Integrity Council in October 2018 left the HQCJ. Among the reasons they mentioned for their leaving were lack of transparency of procedures the HQCJ was guided by in its work, lack of perception of the timelines set by the HQCJ. They also put to doubt the integrity of some members of the HQCJ, and they also mentioned that the negative opinions of the Public Integrity Council were not taken into account by the HQCJ when there was no decision of the competent body of the state about the fact that the person belongs to a certain, has committed a certain corrupt offense. That is my vision of the situation.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts, but I just want to emphasize once again the perfection of that first sentence of your motivation. It seems to me to be the perfect introductory statement to what we're all engaged in here in this process. The judiciary of Ukraine has been at the stage of reforming for quite a long period of time now. Any other thoughts you may have on that during the course of this interview, at least from this one commissioner, would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much for your time and participation.
Justice Mezentsev.
Thank you, Justice Zarzeczny. Доброго дня, пане Сергію.
Good afternoon, Serhii. I'm Yevhen Mezentsev, and let me continue with this communication, and let me address you as the person who has for many years been an expert in criminal law and who has written the PhD and the doctoral thesis in this field, and of course you are a highly reputable person. You are an expert in this field of law. Nobody disputes this. So we would like to get your recommendation. What about the crime, like the responsibility for an illegal, unjust, or illegitimate decision? Is this responsibility something that should exist, or should we probably have more liberal approach to the decisions passed by judges? And should we think that probably it would be enough to have just the ability to cancel this decision through appellate or cassation procedure if the decision does not correspond to the norms of the law, and that would be enough? What do you think of that? Now and for the future,
Коли ситуація з корупційними
when the situation with corruption will be better, because I'm sure it will.
Ви знаєте, пане Євгене,
You know, Johan,
справа не в наявності
I think that it's not all about Article 375 of the Criminal Code and its availability or absence. I think that the pressure exerted on judges is actually performed via the procedure of the pre-trial investigation. And actually, this procedure is determined by pre-trial investigation bodies and the prosecution. And we know that there is the decision of the Constitutional Court on Article 375 of the Criminal Code. And we know that absence of this article would not, as I think, be a precaution, would not be a preventive mechanism. And if law enforcement bodies have a certain goal, and if there is pressure on some judge could register the applications made on the basis of applications made by their staff, some criminal proceedings, saying that allegedly the judges have committed some other offenses, and they actually, in that way, they could start the pre-trial investigation procedure, and this is again the mechanism for exerting pressure on judges. That's what I think. Well, clear, but you know, 7 years ago, I had the honor and pleasure within the Ukrainian delegation to get acquainted with the activity of the so-called Specialized Criminal Court in Slovakia. That is the trial court, let me mention it right away. And in fact, this court performs almost the same function as the High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine here in Ukraine, but it has a little bit wider jurisdiction concerning crimes and types of crimes. On the basis of the experience of Slovakia with this specialized criminal court, we actually used this experience while establishing the High Administrative Cassation Court. And one of the specific features of this court which I paid attention to was the conditions of life of judges. In particular, judges don't live in the capital. This court is located in some small town, some 20 kilometers from Bratislava. It is located in the territory of a former military base or something like this, which has just been reshaped into a small town. And there are court premises which are isolated from the outer world. The rooms, the premises have, a place with armored glass for the audience, and judges together with their families live in the barracks, which of course have been made more fit for living, more like hostels. So they are isolated from permanent communication with the outer world. They have their own drivers, bodyguards, and some vehicles. They are using protected channels of communication, so there is certain isolation. But along with that, there are some similar restrictions, but they are compensated by a good remuneration as for Slovakia. It is much higher than that of judges in general, I mean trial court judges in general. Do you think that such radical measures consisting in isolation of this entity to be applicable for the members of the new HQCJ or judges of Ukraine, or would this be possible? Would this be applicable? And would you think that this could be a useful experience for securing the HQCJ or the High Council of Justice and its members against any possible external pressure? Is it justified? I am acquainted, I'm familiar with this experience of Slovakia and know about this court. It seems to me it all depends on the level of threats that we have for the members of the HQCJ and High Anti-Corruption Court or High Council of Justice. I think that our law enforcement bodies, if there are threats like that, should first of all warn about that, and in case the situation changes and there is a potential threat to the life or health of those members of the bodies you have enumerated, be it the HQCJ or High Council of Justice or a High Anti-Corruption Court. And I think that such measures could be applicable. But as far as I know, there are no threats like this for now, for the time being. You expressed a good idea and a good intention when you said that the HQCJ should be a good, a well-balanced team. It's a good intention, but I think, I'm not talking on behalf of the whole Commission, just my belief is that at least when we have 64 people at our interviews, we've got many outstanding personalities, and each of them has his or her own vision of life, of the composition of the HQCJ, the structure of its functioning, and bless you. And you can see it even from the interviews. Candidates are really different. We cannot even consider them to be the representatives of one and the same legal trend. So, what would be useful, in your opinion? What measures would be useful for the development of this well-balanced team? Something like the party, the servant of the people, was using the mechanism while it started working, team building in the Carpathians, or any other events that could actually make the team united. What would you see as such useful measures in this context? Well, first of all, I would see it as a team of like-minded people. Among the interviews I watched, I saw that all the candidates declare the right approaches. All of them declare, well, probably different vision of the development of the High Qualification Commission, but they are all united in their willingness to make the HQCJ of Ukraine the body that would really deserve trust among people. And if we speak about the basic principles every candidate declares, if these candidates are recommended and become members of the HQCJ, I hope that there will be no matters of principle that will be divergent in our vision of the objective, of the goal of all members of the HQCJ. We all, members of the HQCJ or candidates to this commission are ready to work, are ready to get clear with the challenges we will face, and we shouldn't hush this up. We know that there will be a lot of challenges and that the workload is going to be high, but we should primarily check our visions, understand whether we are really thinking, so to say, in one direction, and whether our daily work is going to be really driving to the results we have declared at our interviews. Maybe I have not worded my question in the proper way. I understand it's not about metaphors. It's not about checking whether we are going in the right direction, checking your watches, so to say. It's pointless, right? You will not physically be doing that. But the issue is as follows. Maybe the future generations of the HQCJ and the people who are elected, like 1, 2, 3, to replace some members of the HQCJ who leave, will find it easier because they will come to a ready-made team which has already been worked for a period of time, which has a well-developed methodology, which has developed some modes. Like on Tuesday we hear this sort of issues, and Fridays we have general meetings, and so on and so forth. So some physical functioning will already be there. But the first composition of the HQCJ that must definitely be born this year will face more challenges. There will be 16 people who most probably didn't know each other before that, or at least did not work together. Of course, all of them will have their own approaches and requirements to the place of their work, to the staff, to their own work schedule. Somebody wants to have a flexible schedule to come at 11, and somebody wants to leave at 2. So what could be the mechanism used to unite them, to have team buildings, to have lectures, or to take 2 weeks for getting acquainted, saying that, okay, let's try to reach some consensus? What would you suggest, just in the practical sense? Well, from the practical sense, in the practical sense, we should just come and start working. We shouldn't think how we will be building relationship with each other. You know, I think that in the course of our work, we will see what are the traits of character of each other, the environments from which we have come, the advantages of each of us, the values we confess, and all the people who will come to the HQCJ, both now and while working in the HQCJ, will be transformed in a way. It's all about the organizational methods that we should suggest to people. The point is whether we are ready to work or not. That's the main thing. Okay. Then my last question. We have noticed when we studied your materials that in your motivation letter you did not mention that you participated in the selection to one of the courts of the Supreme Court. Was it because of your failure, or have you just forgotten to mention this? Well, that was not my intention to hide this experience. I still think that this is a positive experience for me, in spite of the fact that I didn't get the results I wanted to reach. It's not a tragedy for me that I was not recommended for the cassation criminal court of the Supreme Court. That was a good experience, a positive experience for me, and we should move on. Okay, thank you, clear, Serhii, and please, I will give the floor to you, Robert.
Good afternoon. I have only one question for you, and that is, you are a professor in criminal law, and you have been that for a long time. You have no, as far as I can see, involvement with judges or with the judiciary. You have no, let's say, real knowledge of selection of people. And neither you have, maybe you have knowledge, but you have not been active in the avoiding of corruption. Why would you be suitable to be part of the HQCJ? Because of course you are a good lawyer, no doubt a very intelligent person, but I don't see immediately that your background fits and that you would have added value, and that your professor background would have added value in this position.
Well, to tell the truth, I've got some experience, practical experience, which has something to do with the judiciary. The point is that I used to teach criminal law, some special courses at the Faculty of Professional Judges, when this faculty was included to the National Law University, and being the head of the one of the units of the main administration of justice, one of my functions was staff service, personnel service, and it was more than 1,000 of people. To be more specific, 1,719 people that actually went through my hands, so to say. We had a lot of selection procedures, and what I'm always going to be proud of was that we introduced this selection procedure to the State Enforcement Service for people who, besides their professional competence, should also be people of integrity. I had a lot of conflicts due to this, because sometimes people who were dismissed, fired from law enforcement bodies were still trying to get to the State Enforcement Service and were submitting their documents. But I did the monitoring of the situation. I communicated with the heads of the bodies from which they were dismissed. We tried to learn the reasons for their dismissal, and if that was the issue of integrity of the person who was submitting documents to us, in spite of professional competences, we did not hire the person.
Serhii, I have a question for you. It is seen from your autobiography that before June of 2016, you were head of the main Department of Justice in Kharkiv region. Could you please tell us why you decided to leave that position? During the Revolution of Dignity, we had reattestation, which I completed successfully, and I stayed on my position up until September of 2014 with the new management of the Ministry of Justice. Then one of the political parties, which was already the party in power, it decided to participate in the elections as a separate party. I was invited to the ministry and I asked whether there were questions about my time on the position, and when I was head of the department, actually there were no concerns with regards to my job, so I was told that I was supposed to quit, even though there were no questions with regards to my performance. You know how it works. Inspectors show up at your workplace and they find some drawbacks. I was reinstated by a high taxation institution, but you understand that it's impossible to work under such circumstances. So what was the reason for your removal? Violation of an oath of a civil servant. What was that violation about? I don't really know. So you did not get familiarized with the conclusions of the inspectors? Yes, I appealed the results of that inspection, and actually I was reinstated after the dismissal, but I don't really remember all the circumstances. So you appealed your dismissal and then you were reinstated. Clear. And then in the future you resigned yourself. After the decision came into effect, so you resigned. Thank you, that's clear. Now, when answering the questions of our commissioners, you've explained that one of the suggestions that you have, should you be appointed as an HQCJ member, for the approval of the work of the new HQCJ is to introduce transparency. So you mentioned that transparency is one of the factors necessary for normal operation of HQCJ. In your opinion, to what degree, what level of transparency should we have during interviews with candidate judges and judges? The principle of transparency should be implemented to a degree which will make the process understandable for the society. How do you know when the society is already aware, when it's already clear for the society as to what is happening? I mean that we have transparency of procedures, that we communicate our decisions to the public, we motivate the scoring. That is something that has been already suggested by many candidates and the PIC. We need to understand how decisions are made, but not how they are made behind closed doors. PIC has the right to participate in the sessions of HQCJ in their meetings and also hold a selection of its own members. And the PIC and HQCJ need to work as a one uniform mechanism. The HQCJ and the PIC within their teams should also work as one uniform mechanism, and in their work they should support and reinforce each other's activities. What principle should we use when assessing judges? The principle of integrity, presumption of integrity, or the presumption of non-integrity?
Знаєте, я прихильник того, щоб всі
I believe that all judges
спочатку як доброчесні.
must first be assessed as those with integrity. So it's presumption of integrity. And we need to have the criteria for deduction of points for specific violations. So a person applying for the selection must understand that if they have specific events in their background, it will result in the deduction of a specific number of points. So your assessment will be positive, presumption of integrity. Thank you. Your answer is clear. I am passing the floor to the rapporteur, Tad.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. Are there any further questions, colleagues?
No, sir.
No.
None?
No.
All right. Very good. Mr. Mokhonchuk, we, as part of our process, as you are familiar with it, allows the candidate to make a summation or a summary as he wishes, bringing forward any points that you may not have been asked about and that you wish us to know, or to perhaps provide any further or other observations about your motivation. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to you, sir, for your concluding remarks.
Дякую.
Thank you.
Я очікував більшу кількість.
I was expecting more questions, but if the commissioners have no further questions, then I would like to express my gratitude to all the members of the Commission for the work that they are doing.
Тим конкурсантам, які
I want to wish all the upcoming candidates to be successful during their interviews, and I want to wish the people of Ukraine to win.
Thank you for your comments, and we thank you for participating in this selection commission process. That ends our interview of you, sir. We wish you good health and safety. Goodbye.
доброго.
Goodbye.